And while the White House is preparing to roll out sweeping new guidelines to crack down on undocumented immigrants, leaders of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus are still looking for answers from ICE officials about hundreds of undocumented immigrants who are already being targeted in a wave of new raids. Democratic New Mexico Congresswoman Michelle Lujan Grisham, who chairs the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, met with ICE leaders last week. Congresswoman, thank you very much for being with me. Were you satisfied with the answers? What have you learned?
No, we left that meeting, frankly, distressed and with many more questions. They basically showed us that 683 people were detained and deported. We don't know where they were detained. We don't know how many were actually deported, how long that took, whether there was any due process, whether they were using warrants. There was inconsistent information. But they did show that 176 were not individuals that they would consider as meeting the criminal criteria for detainment or deportation, but they were picked up as well. So we want more information about all of that. And as you know, we're very unhappy about the context of that meeting as well.
Now, so what we don't know, what you don't know, is whether the threshold for a felony, which can lead to deportation, is just the fact of being illegal, of having entered illegally, or whether you have to commit a violent crime that then makes you vulnerable.
Right. As the raids were occurring, ICE officials told us, including phone conversations with Acting Director Homans, that there was not a shift between the kind of interior deportations that were the focus of the Obama administration and now the Trump administration, which is that dangerous criminals, nefarious, violent actors are the priorities. And no one would disagree that that's exactly who ought to be considered a priority for picking up, arresting, and deporting. But it was clear by the media reviews that we could see that that was not what was occurring. They then, in the meeting, agreed that they were in a wider sweep, but that was also consistent because you might identify someone as you were focusing on a priority suspect. But that didn't really meet with the data that they gave us. And now, of course, we're seeing these guidance, these memos that are being put forth by Kelly in the administration that make it clear and, in fact, are consistent with what Director Homans left the meeting with. My specific question, given how this is rolling out, and given that you now constitute and in the executive orders prior to these memos, President Trump has said you've got much greater discretion. How many of the 11 million people do you think are at risk of deportation in the United States? And Acting Director Homans said 11 million. And now that's consistent with what we're seeing rolling out of the administration.
Well, in these new orders, one that is going out today, we understand, do you see, for instance, that they're going to permit the Dreamers to stay? That is the signal that our colleague Kristen Welker is getting from the White House.
Well, certainly we know that the president has said that in conversations with folks on the Hill and others. We know that the memos released earlier suggest that Dreamers are not the focus of the expanded discretion, but we know that Dreamers were picked up over the raids last week. The other issue that people really, I think, need to think about is we're going to take Dreamers, maybe in college, maybe just ending high school as they get ready for college, but we're going to separate them from their families. And I will tell you that there's grave concerns not only by the Hispanic Caucus, but by so many advocates and organizations that you had an 18-year-old without familial support. It's the cruelest act I've ever heard to really impact and separate these families. In addition to the discretion, there are sweeping changes about how we treat nationals, not just from Mexico, but in other Central American countries, about what the new rules are in terms of moving them over to Mexico, which is not current international law.
Well, Congresswoman, I hope you get better clarity going forward and continued efforts to try to get Homeland to explain exactly what is happening along the border and throughout the country now. Thank you very much for the update.
I appreciate that, Andrea, and I'm delighted to be here. We have a job to protect as many families as we can and to do what we can to work with the Trump administration to minimize the kind of mass hysteria, and I appreciate the opportunities to do that here.
Well, anytime, open door. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.